Yo guys, what is up? Max for Diablo 4 video, and today we're talking about the Adira's Inexorable Will. Now, this is the new ring for Druid. If you want to get it, the dedicated drop is Varshan. It took me about 4 Varshan kills to get mine, so they do seem to be dropping relatively often. They can also drop in like Nightmare Dungeons and stuff, but Varshan's definitely the best place to get this thing right now. When I originally tried this ring, I thought it was pretty bad, I'm going to be honest. And then I tried to make a build specifically around this ring, which I will have a build guide for tomorrow. And I'm actually enjoying it a lot. And so I want to talk about kind of the ins and outs of this ring and how to make it do the most damage, because I've got it hitting for like 1.7 mil right now, which is really nice. And there's some cool combinations that you can do with that. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So to start just going over this ring, it rolls percentage willpower, which is massive. Currently in the game, everything that you can get on your weapons are all additive. And the only other source of like multiplicative damage is your core stat. That's why so many people are using like their core stat plus all stats on their weapons, because your like stats on your gear right now are multiplicative still. So percentage willpower is really great. Then we've got damage to close, lucky hit, and ultimate skill cooldown. Now the inexorable will works very similar to how the malignant heart worked in season 1, albeit a little bit different. So this reads: when casting an ultimate skill, and again 5 seconds after, you pull in distant enemies and deal a base physical damage to them. This damage is increased by 1% per 1 point of willpower that you have. Now, in the like season 1, this was going to keep pulling enemies in as long as you were in your ultimate. And so ultimates that stayed up longer, you could constantly pull in enemies. Now it's 1 pull and then 1 pull 5 seconds after. If you still have your ultimate up, like you're in a Grizzly Rage, it's not going to keep pulling enemies towards you. Now, the new thing is that it does damage. This wasn't part of the Malignant Heart last season. And this damage, while it looks very low, is improved by 1% per willpower. Right now I'm sitting at 820 willpower, and it's got around like 40,000 plus base damage, which is basically the same amount of damage as a max rolled corroded signet. So the way that I've been using this is pairing it with the flicker steps. Now the flicker steps are new this season. When you evade through enemies, you reduce the active ultimate cooldown, which is fantastic. You can pair this with the Metamorphosis vampiric power to give you unstop on all of your dodges, and they also are default rolled to attacks reduce your cooldown. So right now I'm using a Stormclaw build where I can constantly attack really quickly and then dodge through and then constantly get my ultimate back. This is how I would use this amulet or this ring. Honestly, I don't think I'd recommend using this at all unless you're using flicker steps with it, just because you're losing a lot of damage technically not having this on, or having this on. So the tricky thing about scaling this, originally I was using it on like an earth build, and earth skills do physical damage, which I like in my brain was like, this is going to be really good on like plague shifter or like a landslide or pulverized build. However, earth skills do physical damage, but earth skill scaling does not actually increase your physical damage, if that makes sense. So for example, things like Earth and Devastation give us more damage with Earth skills. There's a lot of Earth skill damage increases in the Paragon board. Those do not actually scale the damage of this ring. It's physical damage, not Earth damage, even though they both do physical type damage, if that makes sense. Just as you have like storm skills, and tornado is a storm skill, but it does physical damage. It doesn't do lightning damage. So the way that I found to scale this is with all damage multipliers. There's a ton of all damage multipliers. We took advantage a lot of them in like the poison explosion build. And when you start stacking up all damage multipliers, things like Fang and Claw, things like Werewolf, things like Guzzler, where you're increasing all of the damage that you're dealing, then you can start making this ring do some actual serious damage. Let's see if we can get a little demonstration here. So I'm going to make sure everything is poisoned. The reason I want things to be poisoned is because Envenom works with this amulet. Or this ring, so this like massive crit multiplier is going to work. I'm also using Poison Creeper right now with the 20% crit chance, because this does crit and it scales with our crit damage. So we can poison things up. We pock our Poison Creeper, then we ultimate. There was some 1.1 millions, and let's kind of dash around again, get our ultimate back real fast. Poison Creeper, explosion. There was a 1.6 million explosion off of that. So What I've been doing right now is I'm pairing it with the Corroded Signet, which does a bunch of damage explosions, then the Inexorable Will. And the reason that these have such good synergy is because this does damage to nearby enemies. Obviously, on the test dummies, we're not grouping up enemies with the Inexorable Will, but when they are actually grouped up, then all of the poison damage that we're doing with our Poison Creeper and our Claw ability is going to make sure that all of the enemies are getting hit by X-Fulls, which is a massive damage source right now, and these synergize so well together. On top of that, I've got the Overcharged aspect, which overloads enemies and does a bunch of damage to surrounding enemies, and I've got Overload, which does a bunch of damage to surrounding enemies, and pairing all of these like kind of flat damage modifiers that do a set amount of damage with a bunch of all damage delts, and then grouping up everything is allowing me to have some of the easiest times I've had with Nightmare 100s with this ring right now, just because it provides so much quality of life. We've got so much AoE damage, and we're able to scale all of it instead of scaling poison damage and lightning damage and physical damage. We're just scaling all damage, and everything that we're doing is synergizing really well and hitting really hard. And that's why I think this ring, when you build around it, is fantastic. However, on most builds, like I would say probably 90% of Druid builds are probably not going to be running this, besides for like maybe some speed farming and some quality of life. I just don't think it's worth losing a lot of that like damage that you can have all the time, especially if you're not using Flicker Steps. I wouldn't even put on this ring if you're not using Flicker Steps, but when you build around it, this ring has a ton of potential. And once again, this build that I'm working on, I will have a guide for tomorrow, because we are currently blasting Nightmare 100s on it, and I'm really, really having a good time. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. Make sure to keep an eye out on Varshan materials so that you can go get yourself one of these. Once again, good when you build around it, not great when you're not building around it. And I will catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.